We're starting in 1 minute because our guest actually has a meeting with the Prime Minister and has to leave here at 3. So this is not me being quick with your lunchtime. She's got important places to be after this. So hurry up. I'll give you a minute countdown and then we'll get this started. No. Just started? Or wait? Okay.
I'm always happy. I'll wrap it up in 1 minute. We got time for one question.
We're never on time. We're never on time. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a great lunch. We had a lot of really enjoyable sessions this morning talking about a lot of different things going on in the world. One word that gets used oftentimes is innovation. But what does it actually take to build it? Not on a single market, not a single company, but across borders and in collaboration. Our next session will explore exactly that in a fireside chat titled Innovation Beyond Borders, Co-Creating the Future. Please welcome to the stage. They're already up here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kirk. Great job. I don't know where we'd be without you and Galina keeping the crowd going. My guest this time is Tamara Milovanovic. She is the Managing Director for Southeast Europe for Philip Morris. And as you know, we're going to talk about innovation beyond borders. And all the sessions, you can see there's much more of a global and regional outreach in terms of what we're doing. And Tamara, she's lived in Canada, she's lived in Europe. You're very global in your perspective. And I kind of want to get your initial impulse, like, tell me why innovation matters and why we have to embrace it in terms of where it's going.
I think innovation matters because it changes people's lives for the better at a global scale.
And when you look at it, how does, what's the difference when you move from a global strategy to a local strategy in terms of how you have to apply innovation?
So let me answer that by going back to 16 years ago when I joined Philip Morris. And at that time, it's not exactly a company that many people would think of as being innovative or the model of innovation. You could call it iconic, for sure, given the global success of its flagship brand Marlboro, but the product was essentially the same for over 200 years. So any innovation was basically marginal or incremental. Now, all that changed just over 10 years ago when the company innovated something called the IQOS device. And this was a moment of really revolutionary innovation and change for this industry. So why is that? Well, as I said, for 200 years and more centuries, people were consuming tobacco. Primitive tribes, modern societies, there were all forms of tobacco consumption. Some were chewing it, but the predominant portion of people consuming tobacco were actually burning it and inhaling the smoke. So in that way, people were getting the tobacco flavor and the nicotine, which they wanted, but they were also getting smoke. And this smoke is what contains many harmful constituents, which are actually the primary cause of smoking-related diseases. So when Philip Morris invented this little device called IQOS, what they did is they solved this big problem, and it's the problem of burning. Because this device heats up the tobacco instead of burning it, so you still get this tobacco flavor and nicotine that you want, but it comes through an aerosol or vapor, which reduces the number of harmful constituents by 95%. So this is, global innovation that helps the lives of over 1 billion smokers worldwide really lead to something better. And when you say global versus local, I would say at a global scale, innovation is about solving big problems, putting big resources and a lot of time behind it, and then allocating and prioritizing the resources, how you roll it to the markets. At a local level, you need to think differently. You need to actually create an environment for that innovation to come and for you to benefit from that, your consumer to benefit from that, and your society. So you need to innovate on business models and different ecosystems that can enable that innovation to flourish.
It's interesting because I view nicotine like alcohol, like coffee. It's something that humans like to consume for whatever the purpose. I like nicotine because it keeps me awake. I've never been a smoker. So obviously, as you transform towards a smoke-free technology, that's driving the future. What are some of the challenges that are driving that shift?
So when Philip Morris in 2016 came out publicly and announced this big strategic shift towards smoke-free products, this was coined by Harvard business case, studies and everything as one of the most radical corporate transformations in history. So from a leadership perspective, I think this took a lot of courage to take a product that you've had for over 100 years, or a brand like Marlboro, and basically shift so many resources, almost all your resources, to developing the new products and commercializing the new products. And a lot of time, $16 billion of investment, 1,600 scientists working on this. They put really this big machinery behind it. So I think the first big challenge was taking this decision to give up on your tradition and reinvent it to something that is uncertain at that time. From today's perspective, it obviously looks obvious, but put yourself in the shoes of that leadership before, it's a big leap of faith. Now, the important thing is that that moment actually completely changed the face of the company. It accelerated further innovation. And while IQOS was completely built in-house, the innovation that came after, and new product categories and everything else, came through different models, partnerships with different companies, through acquisitions, and even recently through something called the open innovation concept, where the company is inviting outside scientists and institutes to contribute. And the acquisition that we were discussing yesterday in 2023, Swedish Match, again, it was a big leap of faith. Philip Morris acquired a Swedish company that has a nicotine pouch product branded Zyn. Everybody thought, some people thought it was vastly overpaid, so the multiples were much, much higher than the traditional multiples in that industry, but it turned out to be the right move. And, I think when you believe in innovation, you take the leap of faith, often it works.
Well, it was a brilliant innovation because you took someone who wants to consume nicotine, and instead of making them smoke, you gave them a smoke-free way to get the same, effect, which is incredible. But when you are a global company and you're innovating, like, does all the money stay at head office? Do you spread it around the regions? Can places like Macedonia, like how can it go through the ecosystem and everyone gets, part of that innovation franchise, so to speak?
So it's a great question, because that was part of my answer to your first question. Is the key moment is resource allocation. Once you invent something, how do you allocate the resources? And in this process, in our industry, Macedonia has a big role to play. So Macedonia is traditionally a tobacco growing country. And as I explained, at the core of IQOS is tobacco. Macedonian tobacco actually included in this equation. So we're not forgetting our tobacco heritage here, we're actually reinventing it. And in a country like, actually in any country, because this process of innovation and consumer transitioning takes time. So you have to manage both the present and the future at the same time. I think in Macedonia, we've found an incredible model to support that transition and fulfill the needs of the present while transitioning to the future through a public-private partnership that we entered into 11 years ago between a government-owned entity under the tutelage of the government and Philip Morris. We created a joint venture company, and through this system of partnership, we have several streams of value. The first is leaf buying. We're a significant buyer of Macedonian leaf globally, and this obviously this sector supports thousands of families, farming families in the country. The second is that through this joint venture, we commercialize our products, and the Prilep factory, TKP, which is our joint venture partner, manufactures the products that we sell, the traditional products that we sell. And the third component is something that we didn't actually think was possible when we first started this partnership, but it's the fact that we developed over the years, and now we got to the level that the Prilep factory started exporting to some of the Philip Morris markets in the region. And also in the smoke-free business, we started building up some services that we can create in Macedonia for markets beyond. So we have a call center, service center located here, servicing other markets. So I just want to maybe have one little personal anecdote, because I was part of the team that created this, that worked on this partnership originally, and I remember vividly going to the factory before any of this happened. It was a loss-making entity burdening the government's budget, and the state of the production was not in very good shape. So you walk into the production floor, there was actually this, those plastic bins that you buy at the local store, collecting the rain falling in through the leaking roof. And, very difficult to imagine that this type of production site could become an export factory one day. So anything is possible. Actually, now when I took this role, after many years of not visiting there because I was doing different roles in the company, I came back, and not only is the production at high quality and safety standards, but actually the roof, which was leaking, was reconstructed and completely covered in solar panels. And this fulfills all the energy needs of the company. So, I mean, this partnership story is really incredible, a bright example of what can be done when people come up with creative ideas, even in traditional industries.
Well, and it's a testament, because you took what was basically a domestic manufacturing facility, and now you're able to upgrade it and use it for export, which is what we want to do to every industry here, if possible. We heard in an earlier panel today where they talked about the different regulatory environments and the 6, 7, or 8, depending where you define the Balkan states. But in the regulated industry like you have, how do you balance innovation and compliance and sustainability when you're Southeast Europe? How many countries do you have?
6 countries
6
in my
countries.
area, yes.
So how do you balance the jurisdictions as well as the different goals?
So, as you said, we're a hyper-regulated industry. Probably together with pharma, we have the most experience in regulation worldwide. And now, you know, with the technology companies, you're seeing some of the same debates come up on smartphone usage, AI, you know, what is the right level of regulation versus freedom? And any innovation actually brings those debates, those policy debates. What we've learned in our industry over many years is that when a policy solution looks simple, usually it's not, because it has unintended consequences that are derived from it. So the main example from our industry is radical regulation and bans. When you ban a product or you have radical regulation, usually what you end up doing is creating an illicit market in our industry and not actually solving the problem of reducing smoking rates. And we see that in many examples in Western Europe, where some of the most regulated industries have illicit trade at 40 or 50%. Countries that you could never imagine would come to that level. On the other hand, you have some more progressive policy directions. I think we've heard Sweden being referenced many times in today's panels, and in our industry, it's also a very interesting example. It's a country that took a progressive approach to nicotine regulation, embraced harm reduction as one additional policy tool on top of just regulating products, and they leveraged their oral tobacco tradition. The result of that is that Sweden has similar nicotine usage rates as the rest of Europe, but the smoking component of that is the lowest. So the rest is mainly accounted by these innovative products. And the health or public health policy impact are extremely positive. It has the lowest level of smoking-related diseases of anywhere in Europe.
So when you look at today and you would go back 5 or 10 years, what would be different about the organizations you would be working with today versus, you know, when did you start with Philip Morris? Not
16 years ago.
15 years. So
yes.
15 years ago to today, how would it be different in like having your job today versus what it would have been like 15 years ago, and how different the organizations are and what you have to do?
Well, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. An industry where the product was the same for 200 years has a pretty finite number of issues or business problems that we need to solve. Today, just in the last couple of years, we've come out with 3 innovative product categories, and I think there's more. So the organization needs to be extremely adaptable, extremely creative, and extremely inclusive in the sense of mobilizing a large number of stakeholders outside of its own organization, so externally facing. I would say that's the real challenge these days.
And how would you define that in terms of when you co-creating the future, in terms of when you look forward? That's going to just compound itself and become even more parties that you have to work with?
Well, absolutely. I think there's kind of what we just talked about, 3 elements that I would summarize in terms of co-creation. So 1, you have to co-create on product innovation, scientists, other experts, innovators from all over the world. 2, you have to co-create regulation. So you need a social consensus and kind of a partnership approach by governments. And 3, you co-create business models, which is in Macedonia something that we've been successfully pursuing for these past 11 years, and I think the benefits of that just keep compounding themselves.
Okay, we're going to, there's not going to be any Q&A because she's got an important meeting after this meeting, but before we wrap up, I want to ask you, when you look at the leaders of today, to ensure their organizations are not just adapting, but actually creating and co-creating across borders, what are the things that consume you and your organization in the look forward on that?
Leaders in large corporations are usually called CEOs, right? That's the naming that we usually use. And when you think about what this means, the normal way to interpret it is Chief Executive Officer. But executive is not a very inspiring word, at least to me. It's like a robot executing something. So to answer that question, what should a CEO be and what should a CEO do? I would have some fun with these words. I would say a CEO needs to be a Chief Evolution Officer, always evolving their business model further, a Chief External Officer, engaging external, listening to the external environment and the local realities, a Chief Ecosystem Officer that creates partnerships that last and provide win-win innovative business models, and a Chief Emotional Officer. I think that one is self-explanatory.
So that was emotion,
external, ecosystem, and evolution.
And evolution. Mike Z is going to steal those 4 E's when he starts talking about CEOs of the future.
Whoever comes up with the best one by the end of the forum,
That's a good
let
one.
us know.
How's your trip to Skopje been so far?
Fantastic. It was such a pleasure to be here, and I thank you very much for having this conversation. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, I promised she'd be out by 2:55. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, and thank you to the audience.
Thank you, Tamara and John. And many thanks again to our Diamond exclusive partner, Philip Morris, Tutunski Kombinat Prilep. Now we pause for a brief but meaningful moment. And I would like to call our CEO, Nikita Moiseska-Blaževski, up to the stage to give awards.
Not prepared, really, because this is more an emotional moment, a moment in which we would like to really honor the people who are always with us, behind us, or ahead of us. And throughout the years, 18 years, there have been many such people, and we always want to honor them, to celebrate them, and also to motivate them to stay close to the organization and support the organization and the country. So today we would like to honor 3 such people. Tomorrow there will be more awards coming in. But these are people that stayed with us for many, many years, more than 10 years, and people who were always with us, even in the toughest moments of the organization. And yes, there were tough moments of the organization. It's not always easy, soft, and so I would like first to start with a person. I mean, I'm not starting with a person, but to mention a person that is with the organization for more than 15 years in different roles. She was one of the persons that actually brought me closer to the organization. Actually, there were 2 persons. One of them received this award last year, so this year it is time to award it to the other person. She's been the one that motivated me and kind of helped me to learn more about Macedonia 2025, and was also part of the selection committee when I was interviewed for the position. She was at the stage a few moments ago. That's Anna Arsov. Anna is also a dear friend. She previously said there are many people from Korčagin here, so I'm one of those. Thank you, Anna, for everything that you're doing for the organization. And you know what? Anna changed her career, as she mentioned previously, so I hope that she will have now more time and energy to focus on Macedonia 2025 and also on Macedonia.
Thank you.
So Anna, thank you for being here, and I really hope that you'll be coming more and more frequently and helping us.
Thank you. I just want to say Nikita is a spectacular leader. It's 1 in a million. We are 2 million countries, so she's one of the 2 then. And we haven't identified the second one. We are looking for those and for the future leaders of Macedonia, and she's definitely one and current leader. And this organization wouldn't be without you, and it's the best decision I've ever made as a board member. So thank you for everything and being a good friend.
I think that Elizabeth, those of you that were with us yesterday at the reception at the President's Cabinet, probably know that Elizabeth, she's here, she received an award and she kind of started this emotional thing which kept us going, and now myself and Anna, but it's also time to celebrate our emotions and to give this really celebration to our friends and partners. The second person that I want to mention here on stage, it's a lady again, that has been with us for many years, 10 years, as far as I know. And she's been the one that was our kind of advisor or connector to the external world. It's like what we do, we are sometimes really in the box, thinking of the organization, thinking of us, what we can do better, what we can do best, how to make impact, and so on. But you also need to communicate this to the external world. That is very important. Unfortunately, I don't see her being here at this moment. No. But I would certainly mention her name. That's Angelka Peva Laurencic. And later on, yes. Well, when people are surprised, that is what happens. But there should be surprise to the awards, I believe. The third person, it's a male, so we are not just honoring females today. That is a dear friend, actually first a colleague and then a friend, who has been with us for 5+ years, really drawn to the organization by chance, but always, always being there for the organization, for me, for the staff. So whenever we have this crisis moment, we just have to phone him, and he always answers, and he's always there for us. This is a person that I think we honor for third time now. But, you know, within the office, we were discussing this, and we said, no, 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 we have to honor him again. That's Petar Rybarski. Petar, you would be winner, like third-time winner.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
So sorry for this interruption, but really, as I mentioned at my opening speech, last year we had a donation of 13,000 hours of people from Macedonia and from the diaspora who were either mentoring young students, mentoring companies, supporting in different ways, and I truly believe that we need to honor that and certainly to inspire all the others to join us and support the organization and the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. We've got 2 last sessions today, and this next one is a keynote address that I suspect will challenge a few assumptions in the room. We live in an age obsessed with innovation, with disruption, novelty, and the next big thing. But what if that obsession is actually getting in the way? Our next speaker has spent years studying how organizations and leaders actually grow, and he has some provocative things to say about what we're getting wrong. The keynote is titled "The Obsession with Innovation and Why It Misleads Us." Please welcome Andrew Roble. He's over there, say no.
On the other side. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So we're going to start with a quick show of hands. I would like to understand how many entrepreneurs do we actually have in the room. So if you can raise your hand, if you're a CEO or an owner or a founder, raise them high. Okay, all right. So keep them up for a second if you can. Oh, yes, we have a clicker. Yes, that's the right slide. Okay, so keep them up for a second because I would like you to think, to imagine this very room in 2036, so in 10 years' time. And statistically speaking, I can say that roughly 3/4 of the businesses whose founders just raised their hands will be out of business. They will be gone. And thank you very much, you can lower your hands. 3/4 will be out of business. And if we look at statistics, currently, an average company globally lasts about 10 years. This is a statistical life cycle of a company. If you think about that, it's really devastating to think, to imagine even that. But think of companies on the Fortune 500 list. Do you know how many are now gone from the original list of 500 companies? Look that up if you don't. But I can tell you that's a very, very, very small number. And it's not because they restructured, they didn't restructure, they were merged. It's because they went out of business. And in a recent survey, global PwC survey, more than 40% of C-level executives, CEOs actually, said that if they continue on the current path for the next 10 years, they will not be economically viable. So I'm not saying these, these are not my words that an average life cycle of a company is 10 years. C-level executives are saying the same thing. And they must know why they're saying this. So the real question is not the level of, what the level of uncertainty is, of what the level of volatility is. Again, if you want to check that, look up the IMF Uncertainty Index. It just goes like this over the last couple of years. The real question is, what are you doing about that? And I'm quite sure that you are familiar with Google Trends. This is what, if you look up the word innovation, this is what pops up. So you can see the first 20 years that Google recorded that, and the last 2 years spiking. So we try to look for innovative solutions. We try to look for innovation as the answer to that problem. And innovation has been overused. We use innovation strategies, we use innovation labs, we use innovation officers now, summits, and this has become a massive innovation theater. We really professionalized innovation and we made it visible. And visibility really became the metric. And it's easy. It's clear because innovation is very easy to applaud. It seems like it produces progress because you have prototypes, you have pilots, you have press releases, so something to really boast about at the next press conference. But what it really rarely does is deliver what we, in fact, need. Let me give you an example of a company that I started working with in December. So this is a private equity-backed company. We were sitting in a room of 9 people, myself included, and I asked, so the company seems to be growing. It still has a strong market position. And the CEO seems to have a very clear strategy and real conviction about the future. So we were sitting in the room, and I asked one question. And this question was, what is your biggest capacity gap currently? But what we didn't discuss this. I actually asked them to write it down on a piece of paper. And guess what? Every single person wrote something different. So the strategy was clear, but the company was not clear about its future. So this is not a failure of imagination. This is not a lack of ideas. This is a failure of capacity. And capacity failures do not or hardly ever show internally. They need to be seen from the outside. So let me give you three things that we have learned during the innovation era, and we clearly need to unlearn right now. And the first thing is that visibility is velocity, is the same as velocity. No, it is not. This is the first lie that we need to unlearn. I don't know if you remember a company called Theranos. This was a blood testing startup. Valuation, $9 million. The number of employees, 600. They even had Henry Kissinger on the board. Probably some of you remember that. The technology did not exist at all. Maximum visibility, everyone knew about the company. Absolutely no velocity. So if you look at your own company now, look at your own portfolio and try to see how much of that portfolio is really announceable, how much it is really operational. And if most of the stuff is announceable, that means that you're not going to move forward too far, and you are really performing, not achieving your goals. Let's look at the second lie, novelty. Novelty is not your advantage. If we were talking about Google for a moment at the beginning, if you think about Google over 20 years ago, Google was the 21st search engine. 21st, so it wasn't new at all. But what it was an organization that had priorities and that was able to maintain these priorities throughout and sustain the business model they chose. So if you look at your roadmap right now, how many priorities do you actually have? Is it 10? Is it 20? I mean, priorities 20, but that's what we see very often at companies. And if I ask you to identify your 3 priorities, would the leadership identify exactly the same priorities? Because I can assure you it hardly ever happens. Let's look at the third lie. Ideas do not produce outcomes. So we think that ideas do produce outcomes, but they don't. If we look at another example, which is Xerox, which invented the graphical user interface, I'm talking about the mouse, for example, the laser printer. They weren't the ones who actually made money on that. It was Apple, it was Microsoft. So they came up with ideas, but somebody else monetized that. And my favorite example is Kodak. I don't know if you know that example. They invented the digital camera back in 1975. Where is Kodak now? They probably have a couple of printing shops somewhere, but that's it. So it wasn't the ideas or the lack of ideas that was really the problem. What was the problem was the system that didn't really build around those ideas and didn't make progress with those ideas. So now again, think about your own company and think about the ideas that you had 3 years ago. Do you remember your best idea? Where is it now? Is it dead? Is it dead? Because if it is dead, again, it's the system that you didn't have in place that actually killed it. Now, we're talking about innovation, but this is not an innovation problem. We think of innovation as the solution, but it is really a capacity problem. And if we look around, nature has, nature solved this problem a long time ago. Those who understand my Polish last name, they might know that birds are my favorite vertebrates. So I'm going to give one example from that kingdom of animals. This is my favorite bird. It's called bar-tailed godwit. Have you ever heard of that bird? Anyone? No? So this bird, every single year, flies 13,500 kilometers from Alaska all the way to Tasmania. It doesn't, yes, 13,500 kilometers every single year. It doesn't stop, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't eat. I mean, there's only the Pacific on the way. So you can imagine that it doesn't, I mean, there's nowhere to stop really. So if you think about this bird, it's not special in any way. It's not resilient. It's not particularly motivated to fly to Tasmania every year. But what it does before that flight, it reconfigures entirely. What it means is that it loses the extra weight. It changes how certain organs within the body actually work for those 13,500 kilometers. If you don't believe me, look it up. There was recently a very interesting test showing, I think they had a camera on one of those birds, and they actually saw, how it flew all the way from Alaska to Tasmania. How? I don't know how. I mean, it's probably, about a month or so, but it must be quite some time. I mean, it's 13,500 kilometers. But like I said, before the journey, it reconfigures entirely. And now if we look at the same thing in our organizations, we're saying that there's so much uncertainty, there's so much velocity, but we enter that process as companies with the same baggage, with the same structure that was designed for the times of stability. I said at the beginning that if you look at the uncertainty index, it just goes like this. So if you think about that, ask yourself a question: what would it take for your company to reconfigure the organization, the structure, the systems, in a way that it can easily go through any type of uncertainty? So let me give you some ideas here. One of the solutions is to develop the capacity to sense before the numbers go down. Because what we usually do is we look at the last quarter numbers and we define the next quarters, or we understand what the next quarter will bring. But what if we started looking at adjacent industries? What if we started looking at what our competitors are planning going forward? What if we started looking at what kind of frictions we have in our companies? Because we hardly ever do that, and even large corporations don't do that. So if you think about it, sensing is really the cheapest leverage you have. And I can assure you that hardly ever anyone budgets for it. The second idea is shape. So translate what you have recognized into deliberate direction. Tamara, just a few minutes ago, was talking about resource allocation, but make that choice intentionally and then reallocate the resources where they actually belong and where they can actually bring results. Because if you say, oh, this is what we need to do, but you don't commit, there will be no change whatsoever. But shaping is also saying no to things. So again, choosing deliberately and saying no. And sometimes it's also choosing to not work with a specific client, because remember that by choosing to work with a specific client, you're choosing your future, because that client will very often define where you're going. And the last one is shift. So reconfigure how the organization really runs. This is where the bird, the godwit, actually lives. The reconfiguring, making sure that you readjust before the storm really arrives. Because this is the area where things compound. Now, here's the test. If I asked your leadership team where your biggest capacity gap is in sense, shape, or shift, would you get the same answer twice? What do you think? Are you certain that you would? Because in my experience, it hardly ever happens. And that disagreement is a signal that you should build on as well, because that means that things are breaking, that things are not working the way they should be working. So we're really not talking about, what we're really talking about is reinvention. And again, Tamara mentioned that a couple of times in her fireside chat. And innovation is part of the reinvention process, but it cannot be taken into account on its own without the systems that need to be in place, because if it's on its own, it's just a costume. Now, organizations that fail do not fail because they lack ideas. They fail because they cannot see where they are breaking. The work is not more ideas. The work is honest diagnosis. And I can tell you that honest diagnosis hardly ever comes from inside the organization, because the system hides the constraints. And the organization that will survive, that will grow, even in the times of uncertainty, is an organization that is the most coherent, where strategy and capacity and execution are all aligned. And this is an organization where the leaders can walk into a room and give the same answer straight away. So again, ask yourself that question: what would it take for us to actually be fully aligned in where we are going? Because we need to stop performing innovation, and we need to start practicing that reinvention that, again, Tamara was talking about. So, like I said, most organizations cannot see this from the inside. And it's not because they are not, they don't have capable people to do that. it's because the system hides the constraints. So the only honest question is not, do we have a strategy to make sure that this will work? The question is, can our system actually act on what we already know? If you want to test it, I have put together a small assessment. You can scan that. It will take you only 3 minutes, and you will not have a full answer, but it will show you very quickly whether your organization is structurally able to move forward. And again, a question, if your organization, the leadership in the organization took this test separately, think if they would have the same answer at least twice. Because if they don't, this is where your work really starts. Thank you very much.
To help answer the question, the bird's called a bar-tailed godwit, and it takes 11 days or 260 hours to complete the journey. So you can put your phones down instead of looking that up. I hadn't thought of Kodak in a while or heard of that bird before, so thank you for that. We now move to our closing keynote interview of day one, a conversation that spans leadership, media, storytelling, and the power of influence in the noisy world. The session is titled Stories Without Borders, Leadership, Media, and Influence. Please welcome Jordan Beethoven, CEO and Chairman of North Star Capital, and Elizabeth Namovsky, Senior Financial Executive and Producer-Host of Empowered.
Finally.
I know.
Kidding.
I've been so excited to sit here and speak with you, and I can't believe that we both had to come to Skopje and travel all these kilometers, miles, to have this incredible conversation. And I wanted to begin by saying that we actually have a lot in common. Both of our parents moved to Canada, we were both born in Toronto, and we both have this incredible love of media. So, we were also taught to take action, which is what we do often, and we were encouraged to get involved, to make things better. But I believe the key for us being here today is our love of Macedonia, our love of the culture, and the love of the people, and I just can't wait to begin, so let's do it.
Awesome.
So I've broken down this interview in 3 different parts. The beginning is, who's Jordan Beethoven? How did he get here? So let's begin. I know that as a little boy, you were delivering newspapers in the morning, Toronto Star newspapers. So the Toronto Star has been a part of your life forever, ever since you were like a little guy. So I want to know how you progressed to buying Torstar Corporation and being the sole owner of one of Canada's largest media companies.
Great question. But first, I have to do a shout out. Congratulations on your award last night,
Thank
Elizabeth. Very proud of you and,
Thank you.
and what you've accomplished. I probably will get emotional, but I want to just say that I know Mike and I had a little wink at each other, but I know how proud my father would be, and that he's probably in this room today, because this was his vision. And his vision, Mike and Mitra and John and the entire board, what you have done is remarkable. And my dad believed in the power, and I heard it spoken earlier today, of one person, that one person with a positive attitude can have an impact. And when I look around the room and the people that I've met over the last 24 hours, it's remarkable. And I think this is an outstanding moment for Macedonia. I brought 2 friends along with me, a former federal cabinet minister who is advisor to the prime minister and one of the world's renowned doctors, sports doctors, and they're going to speak a little bit, or at least Dr. Galea is. But I think that they would be blown away, or they are blown away with our culture, with our people, the passion that we have. So I want to get that out of the way. Great question. Slave labor. I look at my brother John. He had a paper out, and he grew this massive paper out delivering the Toronto Star, and he employed me. And back then, the paper, particularly on Saturday, was probably £5, and you spent hours and hours and hours. And at that point in time, the Toronto Star had 2.5 million single copies that they were delivering every day, and some days twice a week. And so I'd always had a passion for it. And I think, as I, again, not to belabor the whole thing, but my Macedonian roots, our love of community, our passion, all the cultural things, the importance of what the Toronto Star represented was critical. And I think that I, along with Torontonians, knew the importance. And what I saw was what was happening to every media organization around the world, where they were, tech was coming in, newspapers were falling out, this whole narrative of fake news, et cetera, and which was great for a political agenda. But I saw this was an opportunity, and the Star was in a complete free fall, operating with a very old playbook. It goes way beyond the Star. There's close to 100 publications that I own. The Star, of course, is the largest. But they were operating from a very, very old playbook. And that playbook was when you could impose your will on readers, and you had a captive market. And what I saw as an entrepreneur was the opportunity to change the dynamic on it. We were 7 years behind in our digital transformation. I saw that as an opportunity. 4,500 employees. Maybe we don't need to have printing presses or own them. We could outsource it. Delivery personnel, the ability to share services with other news publications. So we now actually distribute all the newspapers in Toronto, whether it's the Globe, Mail, Star, the National Post, the Sun, et cetera. So economies of scale. But the one fundamental that I really, where my passion really lies in the whole thing was journalism, and the impact that it could have on a city, and that perhaps if I invested in journalism instead of cutting it, we had one business reporter. Today we have 11, and we're hiring more and more. I have over 300 journalists just with the Toronto Star, and 250 other journalists. So when people talk about the industry dying, I think it's just that it was an old playbook, and that we didn't remember the importance of quality journalism and the fundamentals of that, and that people would perhaps pay for it.
It's interesting that you just said people would perhaps pay for it, because I know that a lot of the newspapers had a really hard time monetizing their website.
Yeah.
And before that, there was another publication, and they were giving away the news for free on the subway. And everyone thought, well, how can you give away the news for free when you're supposed to be making a profit here?
Right. That was one of our publications, and that was one of the ones I did away with. I remember taking a call very early on in my ownership from a developer. And he said, in the old days, 15 years ago, if I wanted to place an ad in your newspaper, it cost me $30,000, and you told me where it was going to be. For half that today, you can pretty well put it anywhere but on the front page of the paper. So I think the model really changed, and we had to adapt. And I think that the digital transformation part of it was, for us, the cool part about it is we're the best performing print publication in North America. We don't lose a print subscriber unless they die, basically. And on the digital side, we're double-digit growth month over month on it. And why? Again, because we focus on the areas that that readers really want. Queen's Park, on the political side, municipalities, on municipal government, investigative, huge area
That's what you're known for.
Yeah, that others weren't. So the opportunity there is you can charge a subscription. The free model was all advertising based. So now we have to be, it's like when you're in Canada, when you're in North America, when you're buying your cable TV, or in the old days, whatever, and you're picking, that's the model that you have to go to. Investigative is really important to me. Municipal government's really important to me, as opposed to paying one fee and getting a little bit of everything.
So you talk about changing the model, bringing it up to speed. However, when you and I were having a discussion before we came here, I can't remember when it was, a couple of months ago, you had mentioned the Atkinson principles and how important they were to you, how important they were to the paper, how important they were to being a good Canadian. Can you please tell us what those principles are all about?
Another great question. We're one of the only publications in the world that has a set of principles. And in 1892, when Joe Atkinson founded the Toronto Star, there were 6 principles that he put in place, and they will seem second nature to a lot of people, but believe it or not, most news organizations don't have them. A united Canada, protecting workers, the role of government, the important role of government, social justice, et cetera, et cetera. And so to me, that was our secret sauce. And so we had to lean more. We'd forgotten about the importance of those principles. I again, coming here, and I think about my parents, who in 1963 came here when there was an earthquake, and they felt an obligation to the country. Fast forward to 1991, another opportunity to help the country. When Macedonia needed medicine around that time, when the blockades were happening, again, a group of Macedonians got together in Toronto and raised money and were able to get the medicine here. The refugee children, the Bagaltsi, bringing awareness to that, et cetera. That's what I'm doing day in and day out. The Atkinson's principles frame up all of that. And I think that any person in this room wouldn't have a hard time with these policies and the importance of them, and the role that they play in our life day in and day out. But the foundation of the Atkinson principles are they're on the wall when you walk into our newsroom. And I think that for me, when I am able to recruit a journalist, an SEO person, whatever, we're able to point to the principles, and they know that we have something that no other news organization, or very few news organizations. And the thing that I say to my team day in and day out is, when you're going home from work, or you're recruiting someone to come and work here, and when their child asks them, what did you do at work, or what happened at work today, and you can talk about the work of a journalist, what they did, how they, a child whose family were being wrongfully convicted of manslaughter, and how one journalist made a difference to overturn that. And so we, again, the Atkinson's principles and how we do it and the role that we play are critical to everything that we do.
Do you know what, listening to you, this makes me feel like they're family values.
Very much so.
And you've got your family at Torstar, and this is how you run it, through your internal value system.
100%. I think I have the greatest job in the world. Aside from the ownership part of it, I'm the publisher of the Toronto Star, so I'm very involved in editorial, and I'm able to sit down with my team, and if there is a social injustice, if there's in which there was, and as you know, in the province of Ontario, the provincial government had basically given away $8.5 billion worth of land to developers that were friends of the Premier, and our team took it on and held them to account, and they rescinded the entire program, and the land was returned, and so that's the impact that and that's every day. Every day there's some miracle like that they perform.
But that's also your job, your career. You are giving Torontonians and Canadians a voice.
Yes.
And a voice that a lot of them don't have on their own. And this is really, really important. It's part of your value system as well.
100%. As I think about this, there was a case, situation about 2 years ago in Toronto where they found the body of a 4-year-old in a dumpster, and it kind of the girls they couldn't identify who she was, and lo and behold, my team dug in on it, and were able to trace that she had been in a foster care home, had been mistreated, and were able to get her name. Her name was Nevaeh. And what it brought was social reform. That we found out through access to information, 1,500, through going to court, massive expense for us, that we have lawyers that every day are going in and getting access to information and holding the police to account, holding the courts to account, and they were able to patch together that this girl who had a name and that she was mistreated, and bring reform to a system that was broken.
It's so important. It's important work that you're doing, especially to give this little person a name. We were talking about jobs, and years ago, I switched my job from broadcasting to finance. And I felt like, oh my gosh, what have I done? The rules and regulations were different. Office etiquette was different. Jargon was different. I had to write 3 exams and pass them in order to keep this job. And I felt like the deer in the headlights. And I'm just wondering, you probably went through something similar. You're not a journalist, and now you own a company with over 300 journalists. What hurdles did you have to overcome to get to where you are today? I know it's a loaded question.
Listen,
it's a lot.
mean, I alluded to it. There were 4,500 people working in the company, and I had, with my board and with an amazing management team, I had to eliminate the fat. And the fat was a broken model that still had delivery, that had printing presses. We had 52 collective bargaining agreements. We have 1 now. And the issue with that was that you had a union, you had a very strong union, and the union was forcing us to have all of our newsrooms, through all of my 70-odd publications, operate independently, so that if a car crash or a murder happened half an hour north of Toronto, I couldn't send my local reporter in Barrie to cover it. I had to send a journalist, a photographer, to Barrie to shoot it. We now have 1 agreement. I'm able to share information, and that has been a game changer. I think that perhaps, the most important thing I brought to it was just that I didn't come from the industry. So I just brought sound business practices. I understood what our customers wanted, what readers wanted. I remember the week 2 of ownership, the CEO at the time came to me and said, "We're going to kill our Sunday newspaper. And, circulation is quite low on Sunday." And I said, "Hang on a second. We're the only newspaper that publishes on Sunday, and we're going to walk away from it." And so, what we did? We doubled down on Sunday. We just invested more into it, create features in it, et cetera, and it became our 3rd best day of circulation. So fundamental things that a lot of the people in this room, the way they would operate with it, but it all came down to journalism. We just needed to get better at our journalism. We needed to relaunch. Imagine this, we had an intern program that was the breeding ground for every great journalist that came through Canada, and they killed the program. And I made a decision right out of the gate, we need to reinvest. We relaunched it. What is incredible now is if you come to our newsroom, when you come to our newsroom in Toronto, a lot of those journalists in there, it went from being a lot of older people that were, older and a little bit out of it, to a very young newsroom that really reflects our city and the diversity of our city. And that intern program allowed me to do that.
And I think that's important because it helps that next generation come through, leadership grows, and it helps grow the paper as well. Absolutely. I want to move on to the news industry. Really, every industry right now is rapidly changing with the rise of AI, tech dominance, and the changing world order right now. As leader of an organization of 600 plus employees, how are you navigating this period of massive change and upheaval? Because it's a lot.
Well, that's a huge question. I could probably spend hours. But we made a decision, I'm going to say 2+ years ago, that we needed to understand AI. And we needed, where everybody else was turtling from it or just assuming we're going to become more efficient, we were going all in on trying to understand it. About a month ago, we made a very significant investment in an AI publishing company that we think will become the publishing that every major newspaper uses. We looked at every model 4 years ago, and the Washington Post had a model that we were going to pay $5 million for. The one that we wound up using at that point in time was $1.5 million. Well, this one I can provide to any publisher, and it'll probably cost them less than $100,000, and it's a 10 times better experience that uses AI as the base of it. So the AI thing is, you know, more on the challenges of it. We all see it, right? The war in the Middle East right now, we don't know whether these videos or the photos or the stories that we are reading, where they're being generated, who's generating, are they coming from someone's garage here in Skopje, or are they, the CN Tower in Toronto was on fire, yes. Right? And a lot of people, we got a lot of people panicking, going, okay, the CN Tower is on fire. Well, that just puts an absolute exclamation mark on why credible news organizations are very important right now. Why? Because we have, the Toronto Star is 134 years old. Another publication I have, the Peterborough Examiner, is 175 years old. And these organizations are built on trust, a relationship with the reader. Advertisers aren't advertising if it's not trusted. The readers aren't paying a subscription. And we have a public trust editor where that person's job, they're the ombudsman. They have to, if you have a complaint about one of our articles, you can launch a complaint. We'll do a study into it to see whether it's accurate. So it's a convenient excuse for us to look at AI and say it's going to decimate us, or to look at big tech, which is a whole other area, and say, you know, and accept it or whatever. What we, the people in this room, others have to understand is that you need to support credible news organizations. That AI, if you use it responsibly, I'm saying to use it, you still need, where does AI get the information from? From news organizations.
Well, Google that steals it from
but
news
they steal it from Google, when you go on Google now, and you get that, where does that all comes from what we publish. We don't get paid for that. Yeah. So that's a whole other area we're litigating. And we've been very active in going after Cohere and all the other ChatGPT, launching lawsuits against them globally to hold them to account, to pay us. So that you know, that I could go on and now, as you can tell, for hours on this.
Okay, so we were talking about deep fakes, and that scares me as well as a financial literacy advocate, because, you know, seniors, immigrants, everyone becomes targeted. What's one new verification standard you think every newsroom should adopt within the next year, and what happens if they don't?
Well, again, it comes down to humans, and I think you have to. We, as I said, we use AI in our newsrooms. But at the end of the day, it's one part of the process. You need someone to verify what is being published, and so you need, and it's a painful process because you really need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. A fascinating thing that we've recently done, our team has done, is where they've gone into municipalities around the province of Ontario, and they've been able to painstakingly go through public records, put all the records in, and it can show irregularities in decisions, contracts that are awarded. That's a tool now that is available to just about anyone that we created. So we're holding government to account at the same point in time.
Good job. So, we're talking about Google and AI. How do newspapers survive when AI takes 40% of your search traffic? Because that's huge.
Yeah, that's the thing that keeps me awake day and night. We are, as I said, our industry was asleep at the wheel. We're now playing. What happened when the internet came on is we all kind of, if you think about it, the classified section in a newspaper was where you went to get a job or sell something. And we dominated that. You want to sell a car, we dominated in those sections, and we fell asleep at the wheel. And Google came in and ate our lunch with all of that. And others, Kijiji and others came in there. So that what we have to do is we have to innovate ourselves. I talked about the publishing program, the experience that we're giving. We need to hold governments to account. We need to hold the big tech. Listen, the reality is you have companies in Silicon Valley that we've allowed American companies to completely control the narrative. You think about it. Going into the last election, my newsroom would say to me, well, Trump and this, that, and the other thing. I'd say, Trump's 110 million people on Twitter. Elon Musk has 240 million people on Twitter. Think of the impact that can have. Mark Zuckerberg with Meta, the team at Google, and you see where they sat on Inauguration Day and what he's doing. So the fear is, how much more is he going to empower them? The key is we have to hold them to account. And I do believe that there are ways that we can do it. Advertisers can advertise with responsible news organizations and support local media, and as opposed to going big tech. And really just again, this whole battle over AI is another opportunity for us to really control our information as opposed to letting others control it.
So I want to go back to Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, and I'm sure a lot of the audience here are not aware of what Canadian news organizations are going through. It's been just over 2 years since Meta has blocked access to Canadian news on the Facebook platform and Instagram. So these news organizations cannot post anything on their Instagram or Facebook accounts. What impact have you experienced over this?
Well, Canada geographically is a challenging country, and you've got regions of the country that don't have local newspapers, particularly outside of Ontario. And so what happens is Facebook became the area that everyone shared information really around community events, important things, crime. And when the federal government tried to impose that they pay publishers for access to their information, Meta said, we're done, we're out, and they basically shut down. And it was an amazing area for us where we were able to, through these channels, publish it. They now don't publish any news through it. So when the forest fires were happening out in Western Canada, there was no way to get any information on it. And fast forward to this past federal election. Elections Canada had a major glitch with posting the results of it. In Canada, the state-owned news organization, CBC, TV channel, et cetera, radio, state-owned, they put billions of dollars into it annually, who I compete against, is the place, de facto place that most Canadians go to. When this glitch happened with the polling and the results, my team had built a system that we were able to push out the information. On election night, we hit 24 million Canadians with the results of the election, which is unprecedented. CBC hit about 25 or 26 million people. The next closest would have been $8 or $9 million. So that, to me, underscores the importance of what we do and what Canadians need and we're looking for, and why we need to protect the industry. And the best way to protect it is just to hold people to account that if they're stealing our information, have them pay for it.
Agreed. Now I've got 2 questions before we go, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's just ticking. I want to bring this home here, because in 2016, Veles was described as the world capital of fake news. As a proud Macedonian, Canadian, and media leader, how do you see the Veles fake news story and its impact at home and abroad?
Well, listen, as a proud Macedonian, I'm somewhat embarrassed by it. I think that, again, we need to hold these companies, these developers to account, and you can. We have providers that provide access to them. You shut them down. We mentioned it earlier, just around the CN Tower, around the war. If we don't put some form of control over them, I mean, anyone that has a teenage child that's in this room, I think is very aware of the impact that social media has, and that the algorithms that they pick up from our kids, that if you're a 13-year-old girl and you're not in the best frame of mind, you go into a deep, dark place and you're looking at things that are not good.
It's dangerous.
Very, very, very dangerous.
Yep.
We have no control. There's no control. So whether it's Valley or whatever, the tech companies, there has to be a form of accountability. And I think that is the role that a good news organization can play, that the trust is there. And as I said, the narrative is really, and it's a convenient thing. Call it fake news, discredit them, do everything you can. And listen, not every news organization is balanced or independent in their thing, but I think we all have a choice who we can follow, and we can educate ourselves with that.
I agree, and I've got one more question, but I wanted to say that whole fake news narrative really bothers me, because there are incredible organizations out there, and I tell a lot of the kids that I mentor, a lot of our young staff, do not go to Facebook, do not go to all these other social media outlets to get your news. Subscribe to whatever news media outlet there is that is a proper one. Subscribe to a real good news organization so you can educate yourself on what's happening not only locally, but in the world news. And on the last note, you said that AI keeps you up at night. And that was one of my questions. I've seen you speak many times. And you are like me. You're passionate. You're emotional. I cried last night. It's who I am.
Sorry.
But in closing, I know that you said that AI keeps you up at night, but what else keeps you up? What keeps your heart going? What keeps your brain spinning? And what just keeps you up at night, news story-wise, to make you go back to work tomorrow and be a better organization and a better human being?
Well, it's a great way to bring this to an end, and I think that I said it earlier, I have the greatest job in the world. I sit at the top of an organization of do-gooders that really do show up every day hoping to make a difference in people's lives. And I often, back home, I talk about it, that we have PSWs, we saw the importance of them during COVID. A journalist plays that role each and every day, right? We just, I sat in at one of my journalists did a presentation the other day where she talked about women plus 50 who are dealing with, this is a good one for you actually, not you, but with your previous life, for your life,
Yes.
where she's written a book, and it's basically on women that are over 50 that have been dependent on men, raising kids, and now their husband leaves them, and they have no financial ability, and they're moving in. The one woman we had on stage was living in a trailer park an hour outside of Toronto, and she had traveled the world and everything. And so the financial literacy part of it, that was one of my journalists that took that on and really made a big deal, to the point now where they're talking about legislation, changing things around to be able to support them. So I feel very blessed. I feel very fortunate to be able to, I call it bring truth to a lot of these things, to bring awareness to things, and to represent this amazing organization. You say 600, it's actually about 1,500, but that's the Toronto Star. And the other part of it that I just want to say is we another company of mine, Vertical Scope, which is a really important company in this whole narrative of AI. And I just want to, this will sort of put another exclamation mark on the whole AI thing. Vertical Scope has 100 million active users a month in its forums. And if you're, whether it's Mercedes-Benz or Peloton or swimming or whatever, chances are you're in one of our forums talking about it with your forum mates. When all the AI companies came online, our traffic went up to 140 million. For 3 months, it was at 140 million a month, and then it dropped down to 60 million. Well, the bots came in, and they took every bit of information that we had in our forums, and now they're taking all that information. So our 100 million went down to 60 million. It's slowly creeping up again. But that just, if that doesn't tell you what's going on right now, I don't know what to say.
It's evil.
It is pure evil.
I could sit here and talk to you for the
Likewise.
next 5 hours. Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Jordan and Elizabeth, thank you so much. What an incredible way to conclude the first day of the summit. Before you go off stage, it seems that it's become tradition that at the summit we celebrate birthdays. So Elizabeth, happy birthday. We have a flower for you. Thank you. Now, before we conclude, I have a few announcements to make. First, tonight at 8 p.m. at Intermezzo Music Bar, we have the networking event. We hope to see you all there. Second of all, I would like to remind you that this afternoon, 4 to 5 p.m. at Inox Innovation Center, we have one side session, AI Didn't Replace Me. So please make your way there if you would be interested to attend that session. And I would like to remind the board and the team of Macedonia 2025 that there will be a family photo right after the conclusion of the summit.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings an end to day one of the summit. I think for the first time ever, we actually finished a minute early, so well done to everybody. What a day it's been. We started with the Prime Minister's vision for Macedonia's future, to bold conversations on investment, innovation, leadership, and a very fruitful way to end on media. So thank you to every speaker, moderator, and attendee who made today pretty exceptional.
Thank you. And now you're all welcome to the Unwind Hour on the first floor here. Thank you. Can't hear.